So to add authentication, I will first of all ensure that Firebase doesn't grant access to all resources. At the moment it does that because in the real-time database which we're using, under rules, we started in this test mode where we in the end allow reading and writing to all resources that are exposed by Firebase. And that's definitely not the idea here. We definitely don't want to do that anymore. Instead, only some resources should be accessible by anyone, and other resources should be protected. For example, in our app here, the list of coaches here and sending a message to a coach, that should be available to everyone. On the other hand, viewing the requests here and then also signing up as a coach, that should only be available to logged in users. And we can tweak the Firebase rules to make sure that this is also reflected on the backend. Now, if you're not using Firebase, if you wrote your own API, for example with Node.js, you of course have to write the code to check this on your own on the backend. Here with Firebase and the real-time database, we can tweak those rules a little bit to control how read and write access is granted. So how does this work here with Firebase? In this rules object here, you see those read and write keys, and then that in the end is a value that resolves to true or false. Now we can rewrite these rules a bit. And for that, I'll quickly have a look at my data first. We have to keep in mind that we got coaches and requests. Now in the end, we want to allow reading of coaches to everyone, but saving a new coach, that should not be possible for everyone. And for the requests, sending, so saving a new request, should be available to everyone, but reading should be restricted. So therefore, in the rules here, we can dive into the rules object, and here we can actually add coaches, because we have a data node called coaches in our database. And now we can set up read and write rules for that part of the database. We can do the same here for requests, to set up read and write rules for requests. And then we can have general read and write rules that apply to the rest of our database. So, which rules do I want to have here? For the coaches, I want to make sure that any data in that data node can be read by anyone. And for that, we set the .read rule here to true. This makes sure that everyone has full read access. But .write should be restricted. We can set this to false, and then no one would be able to write. But I will actually set it to a string where I check if auth is not equal to null. Now, auth is a special variable available in the Firebase rules, which will be not null if we added a valid token to the request. As long as we don't send along any token, it will be null. So then this is null, and then writing will be denied. Now, I'm just showing you these rules here because it's not a Firebase course. If you plan on using Firebase for your own project, you can dive into the official Firebase docs to learn all about these rules. Now, for requests, we have exactly the opposite. Read is denied if we're not authenticated, but writing is actually possible for everyone. And these are very simple, trivial rules, which you could definitely refine a bit more. Now we can get rid of these general read and write rules here, and then publish our new rules. If we do that and go back to our application, we can reload the coaches page, and that works. But on requests, we now get an error because we failed to fetch our requests, and we get back a 401 error, unauthorized, because now Firebase is blocking access here. It's not allowing us to fetch requests because of our new rules. The same would happen if we tried to register as a coach. If I send some data here, you see we also get back the 401 response here. We don't have error handling in the app, which is why we don't see a modal here, but that request clearly failed. Now we updated the data on the front end here, because that's how our app currently works, but if I reload, you see that data isn't really there. Now, of course, these are all things we're going to fix throughout this module. Now, last but not least, if I try to send a message, that should succeed. We can view it in Firebase, in data. If we go to requests, we see there we have a new message, the message I just sent, because writing to messages is something we allow. So with that, we tweaked Firebase, and now we need such a token. And for that, we first of all need a way of letting the user log in and sign up. So let's add a sign up and log in page, then send that data to Firebase in exchange for a token, and then thereafter work with that token.